Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Joining me in the studio tonight is Robbie Rip Rains, looking mighty sexy with that cowboy hat, and Steve Wildman Monrotis, displaying some really cool stuff on the background. And we're really happy to be with y'all tonight. We've got a heck of a good show for you. I wonder.
Whatever are you talking about?
I don't know.
I wonder what it could be. Shameless plug for our friends at Lone Wolf.
Yeah. Shameless. Yeah.
It can't be shameless. I have no shame about anything.
That's right. Shame? What's that? Boys, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing good.
You know, I've never had this much fun with my pants on, DA.
You have pants on? I think we made that joke the other day.
We did.
That's right. It played pretty well the last time.
I had to think about it for a second. I'm like, wait a minute. Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did.
That's okay. I'm not really wearing pants. It was just for the joke.
So you boys ready for tonight?
Yeah.
Been doing your homework?
Yeah. Damn good show for you tonight.
Since Doc isn't here, Wyatt, I am rolling.
Absolutely. Oh, well, I kind of noticed the other night. We've had quite a bit of growth since the last time we did a Dogman history show, talking about the origins and some of the older and more exciting stories in the Dogman world. And a couple of folks asked what were the origins of Dogman in the comments, and that really got me to thinking. I mean, was this something we probably ought to revisit periodically, especially since I think the last time we did a Dogman history show, we had about 1,200 subscribers, and we are well over 7,200 now. So thank you all for that. That is just absolutely awesome. And we got who said hello from Alaska, Pontoon Patriot. Hey, welcome. Got to get the Discord alert. That's awesome. Cool. Mrs. Moon, Robbie Rains watches the Conservative Twins. Yeah, but I both do. We've been joked about starting the show that way a couple times to see how many people would notice.
And we just finally decided to go for it.
Yeah, just what the heck.
Fair enough.
Boys, do something a little different. What, with each of you, what was your first encounter or story or documentary, the first thing that really brought the whole Dogman thing to your mind? And that includes, werewolf stories or movies or things like that. So what's your first earliest memory of something along the lines of a Dogman or a werewolf?
Well, for me, the first thing was watching Lon Chaney's Wolfman. And I was, granted, it came out with the 1930s or whatever the hell it was. And I was, just a kid watching that with, huh? Yeah.
Damn you old.
Back in my day, we had to change the channel ourselves. I remember watching it with my dad, clearly a rerun. And I was just fascinated by the stop motion, change that did in his transformation. And I remember, going to the library and reading about werewolves because, of course, at that point, back in the prehistory I lived in, there was no internet. And the whole concept of it just scared the hell out of me. And I was maybe 8 or 9. And I thought I had pretty much kind of gotten over that, as an adult. And then I read Apex Predator and have never slept well since because DA had to introduce me to the Dogman thing. And yeah. Thanks a lot, DA.
Hey, you're welcome. Randall Kildare had a great question. We will be getting to that. We'll be getting to that question and getting into in-depth explanation on that. Joshua Terry says they live in Olive Branch, Mississippi, which is near Taylor. That's a pretty spooky area of the world. Robbie, what about you? What got you into it?
Well, mine's a little bit more complicated than Steve's because I've said this before. This is always Dogman / and I grew up with it as a werewolf, you know, because obviously we've talked about that. Dogman didn't exist till late 90s. So it was always a werewolf for me. That was always my favorite movie monster. So, you know, obviously I saw Werewolf of London. I saw Lon Chaney's Wolfman. I saw Wolfman versus Frankenstein. Uh, the one with Dracula cast. All the old MGM monsters. The Wolfman was in. I saw all those. I watched everything that I could possibly watch on werewolves. And you and I have had this conversation. I've probably seen just pretty near every werewolf movie coming and going, whether it's a cheap B movie or an actual good, high quality made movie. If it's got a werewolf in it, I'm going to watch it, regardless of how good or bad it is. And that really got started. You know, I'd seen them with Teen Wolf and you know, the old Wolfman and things like that, but those weren't scary. The first one that really scared me and got me really interested in werewolves was Silver Bullet.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, I
The
saw
book's
it.
even better than the movie, but the movie's pretty damn good.
The book's really good, but I saw the movie first, and you know, obviously, it's one of Gary Busey's best performances, in my opinion. But and watching it now as an adult, obviously, it loses some of the luster of how scary it was now versus how scary it was then. You know, and people bag on the werewolf; it looked like a giant bear and things like that. But when you watched it as a kid the first time, when you were in like 4th or 5th grade, that was a scary freaking movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that scene where Terry O'Quinn, who plays the sheriff, goes into the Reverend's garage at night looking for the Reverend, sees the paint on the car, and then all of a sudden there's the Reverend, and that spooky, dark garage where it's all closed in, and he starts changing in that garage. That to me, that was the scariest thing I think I'd ever seen in my life at that point. And I saw that after I'd had my Bigfoot encounter. So going from a real encounter, seeing something outside your door like that, to seeing that, and that on the movie scared me more than what was out the door. I guess that is what just cemented werewolves, in my opinion. And I used to have a dream when I was a kid that I actually turned into a werewolf. So that's how crazy and goofy I am. So, so just I guess cinema, books, things like that. That just has, ever since I was a kid, it's been my favorite. I've always been the team werewolf. I've never been the one that thinks vampires are cooler and better than werewolves. I always thought werewolves were far cooler and far stronger and far scarier than any vampire.
Same. I've always been more interested in werewolves than vampires. I think, you know, my earliest memory of a werewolf, something on TV, was probably an episode of Kolchak the Night Stalker, the one where he's on the cruise ship and he has to fight the werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty young. I used to watch a lot of horror with my mother, but that, you know, stuff like that just kind of inspired a lifelong, you know, curiosity about things that go bump in the night. And as years later, when, you know, research started showing that people are actually seeing these things, I'll admit, the first, you know, when I first heard people were claiming to see werewolves, uh, you know, and then later, you know, heard the term dogman, I was skeptical. I was like, yeah, I was a firm believer in Bigfoot at that point, but you know, I thought surely there's nothing like that out there. Um, but I've since really kind of had my eyes opened. I think there's a lot more out there than we're aware of, and I think the government's known about them for a long time. But a dogman, your classic dogman, is any of a number of upright bipedal, dog-like, wolf-like, hyena-like creatures that have been sighted all over the world. And it's not just in recent years. Now, granted, the phrase dogman is fairly new. I think, what was it, 99 or 98 that dogman,
Yeah,
the term
I want
dogman
to
was
say
coined?
it was 99. Whenever that radio DJ started talking about the Michigan
Right.
Dogman, or what they were seeing, and he called it the Michigan Dogman. That's when that started.
So around sometime in the 90s is when the term dogman actually appeared. But when you really start digging into this, you discover that reports of upright bipedal dog-like creatures date back to antiquity. Both Alexander the Great and the Roman Empire documented fighting these things, both in northern Africa, up in the Indus Valley, and throughout parts of India. So they coined the term cynocephaly. Uh, the Catholic Church has iconography of Saint Christopher, who they refer to as the dog-headed saint, who was allegedly cursed with the head of a dog until he performed his first miracle, and then he was cured and looked human from then on. But Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, throughout history, explorers have documented seeing these type of creatures, and it leads us to believe just how long these things have been out there, and have they been hunting us all along?
I think so. I mean, because it's a lot like Bigfoot, that when you really go and look at all these ancient civilizations, just like you said, we've talked about it before, when all of them have some type of Bigfoot type creature, most all of them have some type of dogman, werewolf, hyena. And just to tie this in with Nathan's question, there's different types of were creatures. I mean, if you want to use that term versus dogman, Vikings basically believed in werewolves and werebears, because
Ednar and the berserkers,
berserkers. That's where we get the word berserk from. In Peru and Lima and all those South American countries, they had were jaguars, were pumas. What's some other ones? Then obviously, European countries all across Europe, France, Germany. You had the Beast of Gévaudan. You had Peter Strumpf, or however you pronounce his last name.
Peter Straub, I think it was.
Yeah, well, there's another one that started. It sounded something like that. Yeah,
I know who
you're right about that one. And it might have been it was Peter Straub, and then a different. But anyway, there's like, if you go back and look, there's like 15 different stories that are almost identical, except for the name of the person and where they were at. Now, does that mean that there were little villages that were just adopting what was happening? It could be that it was just that many and it was that rampant. Obviously the Beast of Gévaudan was the most famous, and there's plenty of speculation that was a were hyena, not a wolf, because they said that some famous rich French guy had brought a hyena in from Africa, and it got infected, or it was already infected, and it bit a wolf or it bit a person, and that's where it all came from. I mean,
it's like so many of the wild man attacks here in the United States. It always correlates with, well, there was a train wreck and the wild man of Borneo escaped. How many times did a train crash and the wild man of Borneo escaped, and that's what caused the attack?
Well, that's Werewolf Springs. It was the wild man of Borneo, and they recovered everything that escaped except the wild man of Borneo. And then I guess somebody else caught him, and he was on another train.
All I can say is circus trains must have crashed a lot in the 1800s.
Yeah, they were run by Amtrak.
So if you watch the movie Brotherhood of the Wolf, that's about the Beast of Gévaudan.
Good
one
movie.
That's got Mark Dacascos in it.
Mm-hmm.
Really good movie. And they go the route that it was actually just a real hyena that the guy had put some kind of armor on and he had trained it and all this kind of stuff. But there's a lot to be said about the fact that they actually said that was a hyena, because that was, when people described it, a lot of times they weren't describing a wolf, because that obviously Mark Dacascos, I don't know if his character was based on, but the other guy, whatever the other guy's name was, that was based on an actual person that was involved with it. And Now, Roxanne, they used in the movie they based it on a hyena. Now there were people who said it was a lion too, but in the movie Brotherhood of the Wolf, it was a hyena because they actually did drawings of it, and that's what they sketched out was what looked like a hyena. Of course, a lot of people had no clue what that was back then, but there's all kinds of creatures that have been surmised that they could be, a shapeshifter, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I got to thinking, it's funny how we were making jokes about the werewolf, the railroad being involved in all that, but I was thinking about the movie, the Ghost in the Darkness, and the story about it. Actually, it was a true story. Wasn't that involved with a lion that was eating railroad workers?
Two lions.
Two lions eating railroad workers.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of bad juju with the werewolf or the railroad. Yeah, I went to the Field Museum of Natural History and saw those lions.
There are a lot of folks that believe that Dogman came about because of a government experiment. Now, while I have no doubt that our government wouldn't try to weaponize something like that, I think it's been around way longer than our government has had the ability to create something like that. I think these things have been around since the times of Alexander the Great and the Roman Empire, and probably even longer. But I certainly would not put it past our government to try to weaponize something or even be able to weaponize something like this. What do you guys think?
Say they didn't, jiggery pick around with the genetics of it.
Yeah. I think the last time we had a show on this, Doc, is when Doc brought that article up that's supposedly sometime in I want to say it was the 40s or the 50s, DA, that the government supposedly let loose a bunch of genetically altered dogmen to breed with the already known population of dogmen, just to see what happened with the genetically altered ones and see what happened. So yeah, I believe that it's not above our government's moral high ground to get a hold of any of these things and try to. I mean, I've said it before, if they're going to teach dolphins to put mines on ships, they sure as heck going to take a Bigfoot or a dogman and try to make a super soldier out of it.
Exactly.
Well,
Mrs. Moon says, what's the story about the men in black getting mad their asset was killed by a hunter? That's actually happened on more than one occasion. But there was a truck driver named Joe that we had on the show. I met him a couple of years back at a dogman convention, and the dogman tried to get into the cab of his truck, and he shot it in the face with a large caliber handgun and killed it. And he was stopped by people in a government plated vehicle and accused of killing their asset. So there's a history of things like that happening. So I have no doubt that our government is using these things. But again, I think they've been around a lot longer. I mean, look at the story of Werewolf Springs. That was in the late 1800s. We've got stories and attack stories of these creatures going back long before we had the power to genetically
trappers back in the 1700s.
The late 16, early 1700s.
Yeah. Had
they
stories
called the Loop Guru.
Loop Guru. And that's what Cajuns kind of morphed into Rougarou, because that's what Cajuns do. But yeah, Loup Garou is French for werewolf.
It's interesting that what you were talking about earlier about the government releasing genetically modified dogmen to go deal with the indigenous dogmen, because releasing a GMO dogman into the food chain is there's no danger of anything going wrong there.
Yeah. So I think it's one of those things that exploit the natural environment and what's there. The government's been doing that to everything else for years. Why would any of these creatures be any different? And honestly, that's probably one of the main reasons that they don't want to release that they exist, is because they would lose their eminent domain. There's that word again, DA. Lose their eminent domain on them. because if
Well,
I mean, it's funny to think that would be a thought that's in their mind, but do you have any doubt that would be what they would think? Oh, well, if these animal rights activists knew that we were out here experimenting on a werewolf, they would hang us out to dry.
well,
Jim,
and
I
then
think you
you
hear
could
that
potentially have lawsuits over intellectual property too.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
if somebody, let's say some, what's the word I'm looking for? Someone who is entrepreneurial, wants to do something with the dogmen. Kind of like people have raised stock animals to work on farms and stuff like that. Then the government potentially would have to step in and pull an IP lawsuit, so people couldn't try to domesticate their critters.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what we're sitting here, and we're kind of joking about it, but I think a lot of what we're joking about is it'd probably scare us if we knew what was actually going on behind some of those closed doors.
Yeah,
And
you never want to see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, and it would probably be a lot stranger than any of the things that we're joking about.
Here's a good comment from Ryan. It says Vera Wolflos, and Vera Vulpes were also German terms for werewolves.
Yep.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it, brother. So we're not looking at this being anything new. A lot of people have only recently heard of the dogman phenomenon, and therefore don't give it a lot of credence because they seem to think that it's just something new that started, but it's not. Only the term dogman is new. We're looking at historical and archaeological evidence. No, not necessarily evidence archaeological, but we're looking at historical documents that mention these creatures going back hundreds, if not thousands, of years.
I mean, they go back to, as far as written history, when you get down to it. So, I mean,
yes. Sorry, I hadn't have my son bring me some ice.
Oh.
Junie Shu says there are lots of SoCal reports. There are reports all across the United States, just about every state. I don't think I've read any dogman encounter stories from Alaska. I think that's because the hairy man. The heck just happened?
I don't know. Everything just kind of glitched.
What'd you say?
I have no idea.
It's kind of funny. We just got done talking about the government involvement.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I was saying that I think there's encounter stories of dogmans. A dogman, I think, in everywhere but Alaska and maybe Hawaii. Alaska, the Bigfoot, what's the word I'm looking for? The hairy man. There's another term they have for Bigfoot up there, but they're super aggressive. So
I've heard of something in Alaska called the saber wolf. Now I don't know if that's just Fred may know something about this if he's in tonight, but I've heard of something called a saber wolf in Alaska. I don't know if that's just supposed to be a big dire wolf, if it's a dogman / werewolf or what, but I've heard of it. It's supposed to be somewhere in that Alaskan triangle.
Well,
that
sounds like a good research topic for you, Robbie.
Yeah.
Could be like a remnant Smilodon, maybe.
No, it's some type of wolf, some type of canid. It's not feline.
Because I guarantee if I see the saber teeth, the next thing that's going to enter that environment is my ass heading the other direction. I'm not going to analyze it long enough to go, are you a dog or a cat?
Ryan, thanks for that. Nantanok was exactly what I was looking for. I could not, for the life of me, think of that.
I say that, Steve, but I honestly I don't know for sure. I mean, it could be, but I don't know. I'll have to dive into it.
Well, the only reason I even said that is I was thinking about the I can't remember what the scientific name is for it, but like what people know as the Tasmanian tiger or the Tasmanian wolf. It's the same. Thylacine, thank you. They call it the same critter, but clearly a tiger and a wolf aren't the same thing. And of course, you look at Phylos and you're like, I don't know what that is either.
Shane from West Coast Dogman says in Hawaiian lore, the werewolf is called a kaupe, Kaupe. I'll put that comment up.
Yeah,
I
think it's pronounced Kope.
Kaupe.
Kope. Yeah, my brother-in-law was told me about him. Because I really want a large man-eating creature on that little real estate.
Yeah, well, you can't get away unless you're taking a plane or a boat.
Can you imagine if you just get on the H1, you're just running like hell? It's like, you keep on going past the place where you found it. In like 4 hours, you can circle back to your starting point.
Well, hopefully 4 hours is enough to outrun the damn thing.
I would hope so.
Hopefully it'll lose interest.
Get a taste for something else. And I don't want him now. He's too gamey.
Brian's got a point. He said, interesting point to make here. In pre-Christian era, werewolves were actually a positive thing. They were viewed as heroes and were sometimes depicted as riding horses. In Celtic lore, they called it the wolver, and it was actually a protector of the people. And would people that were having difficulties, it would bring them food, usually in the form of fish, and would actually protect villages from predators or attack. So there is lore. These things being protectors, but there's a lot of encounter stories where these things are just pure nasty. So it's hard to say.
In Latin, they call those the benedante, and they're like Christian heroes that are granted the ability to, transform into a wolf to protect others.
So, do you guys think a werewolf is a separate creature, or do you think that the werewolf is basically just another word for a dogman?
I think that it's just like Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Gugway, Genoskwa. It's more or less the same type of creature, but there's a lot of different variants across the board. Because I think what dogman and werewolf is just a generalization, just like we've made Bigfoot a generalization of multiple creatures, just like monkey or is a generalization for some type of primate,
right?
As we've talked about it before, you call all tissue Kleenex, you call all soft drinks Coke or Pepsi. It's just it's just easier for them to generalize and lump everything into one category, no matter if it's right or wrong. It's just so much easier for them to say Bigfoot than Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch. Yeah. My opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and I've always used the dividing line as, a dogman is stuck in that form. They're always dogman. Where werewolf, you've got the shape shifting thought. Now, whether I think that's actually possible, biologically, no. And I mean, truthfully, if there was some very minute difference between the two species, if we want to call them that, I would think that those that probably got the best look at them are now dogman or werewolf scat, because they didn't make it out of that encounter.
And the thing with the werewolf legend, as it is, the man turning into, there's obviously been plenty of people back in those times that were mentally ill, that didn't get the help that they needed, that told people, I made a deal with the devil and he turned me into a wolf. So that propagates that. But then you go out and you see something like this dogman creature, and somebody's just told you that they made a deal with the devil and the devil turned them into this, and then you see something like that, what's your mind automatically? Oh, okay, that's it. So the legend grows from there. So if you've got a real creature that matches up what this sick, demented mind has made up, and then you got all these other people that see it and are like, oh, that must be it. So they start telling people, and it grows from there. So I think that's a lot of where that part of the lore comes from. I personally don't think it's somebody that's transformed into this. I think it's always just been a creature, like DA and I've talked about, and I think you've even been on some of those. Maybe it's a remnant population from direwolves. Who knows? It just learned how to stand up, or maybe it is an upright bipedal canine. Who knows? Until we got one that we can study and figure it out, nobody. It's just like we say, it's just theory and speculation and conjecture. But I think that's where a lot of the like I think where mermaids came from was manatees and things like that. That sailors were out on the open ocean for months and months and months, and they fevered minds and things go. One thing happens, one thing don't happen. You see something, there's a glare or something. You see that, then you tell somebody, "Oh, I saw." That's where stuff like that starts. But it's always based on something real, something that was there that sparked that or caused that. I think that's where. That's where that line is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah, I think, and to kind of add to your point there, Robbie, I think it's a case of, correlation doesn't equal causality.
Right.
Like you think about the old belief in spontaneous generation. People had seen rats, and they had seen piles of laundry. Well, then when they saw rats in their piles of laundry, the laundry created the rats out of nothing.
Yep.
They don't always put the whole path together, and it's very well could be. I mean, if this stuff goes back as far as we think it does, they're going to be working with less and less science, and like the old quote goes, any science of sufficient technical capability is considered magic if you're not in that same bandwidth.
Yep. So I don't think there was ever a person that went from person to wolf to back to person. I think that's just where that, these people who were, of diminished mental capacity or had some type of mental disease, mental illness that, as we are today, if somebody said something like that, okay, that's fine. Tell me about it. And, the whole time we're writing down what medicine we need to put them on and what rubber room we need to put them in and things like that. It wouldn't shock us nowadays for somebody to come up and say something like that. But back then, if somebody said something like that, that gets you put in the belly of an iron bull and roasted to death, or get your tongue pulled out with hot pincers, or get your skin flayed off with a cat of nine tails. I mean, they handled things a little bit different back then.
A little bit.
But, but somebody who had that, they're not gonna care that that's what's going to happen to them, because just like they wouldn't care now. But we know how to help people now, and what causes stuff like that. Whereas they didn't know that back then, so they just, oh, that's real. And then you go out in the woods and you see something that matches that, and you're like, see, there it is. He said that's what happened. There it is, and it must be true. And I think that's where a whole lot of the werewolves are evil and things like that comes from. It's because, well, they said that they'd made a deal with the devil, and there it is. It's got to be evil.
Yeah, but then you start looking at some of the more modern dogman stories. People that describe their dogman encounters, they use the terms like hellish or demonic. Then you've got stories of vicious attacks. I don't know that I can dismiss these stories, even in the cases like the events in LBL where it's been, I would say, covered up, where you can't find the original documents. There's no reference to it in the newspapers. These stories have been buried. And I think they've been buried for a reason, because the government doesn't want us knowing about these things.
Well,
but so many things keep happening.
I'm not saying that these things are not dangerous animals. I mean, because I mean, look at how dangerous Cape buffalo is.
Oh yeah, one of the most
How many
dangerous animals you can hunt.
How many people get killed in Africa each year? But they kill more people than crocodiles do.
Well, look at hippos.
Yeah,
the damn things they're vegetarians and they'll eat you just because, well, fuck you.
But they're not vilified, and a lot of it may be because they're not carnivorous and they're not.
Yeah, they're not eating us.
But hippos and Cape buffalo kill more people in Africa yearly than crocodiles do. But if a crocodile kills 20 people, what happens? It's a man eater and it's killed. Why?
Got to be hunted down and killed.
Why is that? Right. Why is that done? If Cape buffaloes and hippos kill more people, why are they not hunted down and killed? It's a perception thing. Yeah. So, well, to your point of what you said about the cover-ups and things like that, if the government is using these things and that's their cash cow, pardon the pun, but if they know about these things and they're using them, and people know about them and know that they are dangerous when you get around them or when you provoke them, or maybe even it's a certain type of them, maybe it's not all of them, and maybe the government's just saying, look, we just need to make sure nobody knows anything about any of them because it's going to mess everything up.
Well, so plausible deniability anyway.
Yeah, they don't exist.
Gets off the chain and eats somebody. That tends to be portrayed kind of negatively in the media.
Pretty much. Lenora Wilson had a good question. She says, what about stories that have shown dogmen being very protective of people or a family that they like? When we're talking about an intelligent creature, and I firmly believe that dogmen are highly intelligent, they may not necessarily be, as intelligent as a modern human, or they might be. We don't know. But if they're clearly intelligent, then they're going to have personalities. Just like Robbie, you've got 2 dogs. Do they have the same personality?
Absolutely not.
You can get if you own 5 dogs, all 5 of them are going to be different in some way. And I think it is, and they're very intelligent animals. I think it's the same thing with Bigfoot or dogman. They're intelligent. I think they have distinct personalities, and I think some of them are just plain bad, and some of them aren't. And in some cases, I think it's just situational. You can be very lucky, like the guy that they called the grizzly man. He'd interacted with all those grizzlies many times, but the wrong circumstances arose, and him and his girlfriend both got eaten.
It only takes one time though with something like that. When you're messing with something like that, and it's like Todd Standers, and I use him as an example all the time. Because you look at some people or a lot of people's Bigfoot encounters, and it's all, oh man, it was awesome. I sat there and we looked at each other, and it was just it was just one of those great experiences. And then you listen to Todd Standers, and he's like, yeah, I was lucky to get out of there with my life.
And again, I think it's part of its location.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's look at bears. If I go hiking here in the Mark Twain and I round a corner and I see a black bear, odds are really good it's going to hightail it. As soon as it realizes there's a human around, it's taken off. I might have to make noise. I might even have to, get big and yell at it. But odds are really good a black bear is going to take off unless it's got cubs or, something's wrong with it. Get a little farther north, get into grizzly bear territory. It's a toss-up. I mean, they'll eat you. There are plenty of documented cases of grizzly bears eating people, but they don't always. Yeah, if you catch one when it's hungry or sick and it can't hunt, different story. I mean, they are definitely put people on the menu under the right circumstances. Then you get up to polar bears. Polar bears will kill people. They seem to enjoy it. Polar bears are 100%, 100% carnivore. They do not eat roots and berries like other bears. They are 100% meat eaters. So I think it's similar with Bigfoot. I think it's depending on what type of the country, what part of the country you're in. Same thing with dogman. If it's a very cold climate, it's going to require a hell of a lot more calories to stay alive than one, say, like in South Florida would. Bigfoot in South Florida can afford to eat berries and roots and apples and stuff like that. But you get one up near Skagway, Alaska, and it's going to need to eat a hell of a lot more meat to stay warm and to stay alive.
Well, yeah, and you also have to consider too, it's the diet it's acquired. If if they have never developed a taste for long pork, they probably don't think that long pork is a food source. But once they've tried it,
Well, with the National Park Service, once a bear has eaten a person, they euthanize the bear because they say once the bear has a taste for human flesh, it won't go back. I guess we taste delicious. Either that or it realizes that's a lot of meat for very little effort.
Well, and like you've used that example before, if the bear's in that its twilight years, so to speak, and it can't go
Getting
running
a little
after,
slower, can't hunt like
yeah,
he used to.
it can't run after a moose or an elk or a deer, but it sees grizzly man with his Birkenstocks and his AirPods walking, not paying attention, walking bebopping down the trail.
Wonder how fast that thing can run.
yeah.
Answer is not fast enough.
Not to outrun a bear, you ain't.
Well, it
Not
didn't
even
help
if-
that the grizzly man brought his girlfriend out on his little expedition with him when she was menstruating. So, you might as well ring the dinner bell.
Yeah. But the bear that they documented that killed him was an older bear that was having trouble, catching its own food. So it was a perfect storm. I mean, was he stupid for being out there? I understand there's a purpose for wildlife biologists, but I don't think you've got to live among a group of grizzly bears while they're feeding to document their behavior. I think from a fire tower a few miles away with a big ass telephoto lens will give you plenty of information. I don't think you need to live among them. So I think part of the blame is right on that guy.
Oh yeah, but it's the same thing with most all these hardcore wildlife, and I don't want to call them activists, but just like what Ocean Ramsey, that girl free swims with great white sharks, and that the grizzly man, and what's some other? I mean, there's ones that do it all, and it's just like you're almost waiting for the headline that we got with him, because
they said the same thing about Diane Fossey when she was doing her work, and it wasn't the gorillas that got her; it was the natives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I mean that's regardless.
And again, when you're in the woods. Sorry, Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Well, regardless of whether it was the wildlife or the local population, she put herself in the situation that both of them are dangerous.
And never underestimate the danger that is presented by other people. You could be hiking out in a national forest, get off the trail and run into an illegal marijuana grow and get yourself killed. There are people out there that do mean to do you harm. I jokingly refer to it as the greater North American meth head, but there are dangerous people around. If you hike the Appalachian Trail, they talk about what is it? What do they call them? Feral people.
Yep.
These are just people that have gone off the deep end, that live out in the deep woods, that people just disappear. A lot of disappearances along the Appalachian Trail.
But not even that. I mean, there's just plain out shady people who hang out on those trails just to rob people. Right. I mean, listen to Park Predators. I first started listening to that because I thought it was about animals. Well, I guess you could say it technically is about animals, but of the two-legged variety. But there's
I go out and film, in some pretty rugged areas, but I don't go alone, and I make sure that I take a companion in the form of Gustav Glock or something along those varieties. Depending on what area I'm at, it might be something even bigger, because I have carried a shotgun into places. It just depends on what you expect to be in the area. There are some places down near the Arkansas border that here in Missouri and Arkansas that are just thick with mountain lions, and I definitely would not go hike in that area without some sort of firearm, because odds are good you're going to have an encounter.
Do a little rocking and rolling,
right?
And that way we know if Bigfoot's wearing two armor-plated vests or two soft armor-plated vests, it ain't gonna matter. But yeah, I mean, the point to all that is if you're going out and you're whether you're going out looking for Bigfoot and Dogman, whether you're going out looking for mountain lions, whether you're going out looking for deer, squirrel, whatever you're looking for, you got to be aware of your surroundings, have that situational awareness, because it's not just, oh, I'm looking for squirrels, there's nothing going to hurt me. Well, what hunts squirrels?
Lots of
Mountain
things.
lions, bobcats, lynx, bear, wolves,
Coyotes.
Coyotes, and every one of them can hurt you, or kill you.
And just because you're not looking for something doesn't mean it's not looking for you.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to have situational awareness when you're in situations like that.
Well, you've got to have situation. The way the world is these days, you need to have situational awareness no matter where you're at. And I know, we've harped on this many times. In fact, this is a great time to mention it as part of our affiliate program, Dark Angel Medical. Carry a med kit. I've got. Let me show you my kit right here.
Well, not just a med kit, carry a trauma kit.
Right. Any of you guys have seen any of our recent TikTok videos have seen me carrying this bag, and it's got a 511 EDC kit right on top. My camera bag that goes with us whenever we film has a bigger trauma kit in it. It's got one of the dark kits in it. I had one on my duty belt when I was an officer, and I had one on my plate carrier. You need to have a kit. And that's not just a shameless plug for Dark Angel Medical. That is just a sad fact. The way the world is, 911, when seconds count, 911 is minutes away. Let me throw the thing up, and that'll count as our jump for the night.
When you talk about it not being a shameless plug, Doc will be the first to tell you. Yeah, obviously he would like for you to buy stuff from him. But he's the kind of, if you've got, I witnessed it in the class that I was in. People had stuff that didn't come from him. And he said, bring it in. Let me show you how to use it.
Yeah.
Because
get a kit and know how to use it.
Yeah. Because he would rather somebody have something, whether it was from him or not. If somebody's got something, he wants them to know how to use it. And that's the thing, folks. Don't just buy it and throw it in your bag or throw it on your bag or something and say, oh, well, there, I got it. Because it doesn't do you any good if you don't know how to use it.
Yeah, it's great to have a tourniquet, but if you don't know how to apply one, it's really not going to do you any good. And like they show on TV where someone will tie off their leg with a belt, that might be good if that's all you got, but I don't recommend it. That is not a great way to staunch the flow of blood if you've got a bad cut. And,
unless you make a windlass with something and use it that way.
Because I'm telling you, folks, I have seen situations go from everyday normal to FUBAR in seconds. It doesn't take but one misstep on a trail, break an ankle, roll an ankle bad and you can't walk, or if you're walking and you misstep and roll down a little ravine into a creek or something, hit a sharp rock. Next thing you know, you've got a heavy bleed going on. These kits. Even if you don't get a Dark Angel kit, get a kit. Keep it in your car. Keep it when you go backpacking, because these kits could save your life, and not just from falls or damage. You could be attacked by an animal. You could be attacked by a cryptid. Things can hurt you, and if you don't have a way to something more than Band-Aids and Bactine, you might be dead long before 911 can get to you, especially if you're off the grid a bit. Yeah, and make sure if you do go to Dark Angel, make sure you use discount Cryptid25 for 25% off your entire order, and that includes the kits that I just showed. Those EDC kits take up no room; they weigh next to nothing. Get a kit. You believe me, the life you save could very well be your own.
Yeah. And I know we kind of derailed from what we're talking about, but that's honestly, if you're going to be doing stuff like this, like we do, that's really something that's, I'm not going to say we've neglected it, because we do talk about it a lot, but it's something that's very important. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to take care of yourself one way or the other, you don't need to be going out and walking around in the woods, especially by yourself. Now, if you got somebody with you, that's what you're doing, that's different. But if you're going out by yourself and you don't know basic first aid,
Right.
I mean, you need to know basic first aid if you're going to, and not just if you're just going to be walking in the woods hiking, you need to know basic first aid, because even if you don't have one of those missteps, what if you walk across somebody else that had one?
Right.
And how bad are
thank
you
you for
going to feel?
for the super chat, Flyby Stu.
Yep.
But I was going to say something else and I completely slipped my mind. God dang it. Probably go ahead, Doc. Maybe I can think of one.
Say how bad, if you don't know know how to do some basic first aid, how bad are you going to feel if you walk up on somebody and they die because you don't know what you're doing?
If it's not a stranger, what if it's one of your own kids?
I mean, I've heard Steve tell stories, about people who knew what they were doing and it helped save a life, or people that didn't know what they were doing, and if they did know, then they could have saved a life. And I don't want to be on that side of things. I'd rather be on that side of things.
Yeah, I'd always rather be on the win column.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I went to Doc's class. I mean, I'd been in law enforcement for 28 years and knew nothing. I mean, I might have known a few things, just stuff that I'd learned here and there but I had never taken a class like that. And that was it's one of the things that I said when he had us introduce ourselves and tell why we're there. I'm like, I don't want to be the one that goes in and there's my partner laying on the ground after they've been shot and I don't know what to do. And then I have to look at my partner's wife and say, I'm sorry, I could have done something, but I didn't know how to use a tourniquet, or I didn't know how to use an Israeli bandage. I didn't know how to use a chest seal. I didn't want to be the one.
And don't think you'll just Google it when the time comes, how to apply a tourniquet, because you get off trail, one of the, technology can and will fail you.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on, when I'm out and about on gun ranges, and I always bring my kits with me because I have to typically go 2 miles on the range to get a signal to deliberately put them in places where people don't live.
So, I mean, that's an important part of what we're talking about and what we're doing. I mean, I know it's not as fun as the other stuff that we talk about, but it's something that needs to be said. It's something that has to be thought about because, case in point, when I went down to Missouri, me, DA, and Noah sat in the car. We're like, okay, look, what are we going to do if this happens? Where's this? Where's that? Here, DA's like, here.
Who's got the kids? Who's got
Here's
this?
my trauma kit. It's here. It's called a safety briefing. I mean, we did that both times. And I mean, the chances of something happening, especially when we went down in broad daylight, are, slim to none. But still, you can't. If you
broad daylight, you can walk up on a snake.
Yeah, if you fail to prepare, or you're prepared to fail.
Exactly. But all that being said, get a kit, be prepared. You never know, the life you save could very well be your own. Boys, when it comes to infamous dogman attacks, which story do you find the most compelling?
That's easy for me.
As far as dogmen go, probably the LBL story, just because the fact that there was so much anecdotal evidence about it, and then so much of it that disappeared. It's like you alluded to earlier. There's all that stuff about the missing people, the missing 411 that have gone through Joe Bald Park over the years, and then when you and I went back to try to find the website, it was gone.
Right.
I'm like, why? This kind of stuff. The LBL thing's the same way. It's like, half the people that allegedly saw anything, people haven't heard from them, and then those who are still around, won't talk about it for whatever reason. Yeah, it's enough that it's so suspicious. It gives you that feeling, you know.
What about you, brother?
Well, obviously, same as Steve, the LBL one, but since Steve said that one, the second one is what's the one that Dark Waters talks about?
The siege at Lockett Ranch.
Yeah,
That's a scary one too.
That one is that was just as scary, or not scarier. But I mean, there's a lot of them. And was the one at Lockett Ranch where they had put their guns out in the barn?
No, that's Palmyra. Palmyra,
Okay.
Maine.
I always get them two mixed up, but with that one too, the one at Palmyra where they moved into the house and wiped it and want the guns in the house and made him put them in the barn. And that one, when they say they looked out and it's like a scary movie. The mist is out there and they see the eyes, and then things start getting closer and they see them sitting out there just beyond the fence line. I mean, you start seeing this thing play out in your mind, and your mind starts, you know how it does play in that movie, and you actually start watching that movie. That's damn scary. When you think about it, in the same way with the other two, I mean, the way these things, I think those creatures actually wanted in and wanted to kill those people. I'm not 100% sure about the other ones. If that was the case, maybe not. But
Lockett Ranch, they undermined the foundation of the house. They were busting through the floor. They were coming through the walls. Yeah, those things were intent on killing that family.
Yeah, the other two. That's why I said the other two. There was some things that make me say they might have wanted to, and some things are like, well, they could have if they wanted to. But regardless, any one of those three situations was scary as hell, and I would not want to be in them without being prepared like we normally are. But there again, it goes back to being prepared. I mean,
right?
If you're going to live in a remote area like these people are living in, you can't just be lackadaisical and ho hum, and because even if you're not thinking of dogman, there's bears, wolves, coyotes, there's all kinds of big critters that are wild that will hurt you. Not to mention the fact that you're way away from, a quick response of local law enforcement. So if anybody breaks in on you, you're gonna have to take care of it yourself. So
there's no way I would have put my guns in the barn.
No, and not happening. I do not understand. I can't get that. There's nobody. I don't care who it is. President of the United States could not come and tell me you're going to have to keep your gun. Sure, whatever you say, buddy. We'll get right on that. Ain't nobody going to tell me where I'm going to keep my guns on my own property. Number one. Number two, if I'm out in the boonies like that, yeah, there's going to be a gun on me at all times because you never know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah,
you could walk up on a snake. You could, step outside your door and there'd be coyotes in the yard. I've done that when we lived out in the country. Go out to we used to when we lived out on the farm. We burned our trash. We didn't have, this was back in the 70s. We didn't have trash service that came out. We would go out and had a burn barrel where we burned all the burnable trash. And if you went out there after dark, there were coyotes out there. And it was not uncommon to see 4 or 5 of them down near the burn barrel because they smelled the burning trash. So we got to where if we as kids, we made sure that crap was burnt before it got dark, because you didn't want to be out there in the dark and hear those things around you moving around in the darkness, because the burn barrel wasn't right up behind the house. It was about 50 yards back into the trees behind the house.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess you take your pick on any of those, the LBL, Lockett Ridge, Palmyra, that any of those are terrifying situations to be in. Obviously, the one at LBL, I think, ended the most tragically. And you could even throw the other one in there that we talked about with the two bicyclists.
Yeah.
Who were
Well, that was
bicycling through there.
LBL.
Yeah, that's
Then
what
you've
I'm
got
saying.
the deer hunter. You've got the Martin Grove story. For when it comes to dogman sightings and attacks and encounters, LBL is probably the hot spot. But you know, I wouldn't rule out other places, especially places fairly close by. As the crow flies, we're not that far from LBL. We're a good 6-hour drive, but the Missouri River Valley and the Ozark Highlands, there are a lot of terrain for something like that to hide. Not only that, it was right down here at Kimberling City where Steve and I had our encounter at the Joe Bald at the old Joe Bald campground. Robbie and I went down there with Noah and found a massive, well, I found more than one, but found massive canine tracks, 6.5, 7 inches across. That's not typical.
Well, and even if you don't, quote unquote, believe in dogmen, that is a big fucking wolf.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to run into that bastard. And but we only found hind prints. We didn't find any front prints.
But I'm just saying, devil's advocate. 6 or 7 feet around, that thing could look you in the eyes sitting.
Right.
I don't want to encounter that dog.
Well, Steve, you are, and I know we told you this when I was down there, but just for the sake of everybody else hearing it, that area that I was hiding in, where I found the print, there was 2.5, maybe 3 feet on either side of me, probably another 2 foot behind me, and 1.5 to 2 feet above my head. It's like, and Greg explained it better. He's like, it's like a bird nest turned on its side. I said, that's it exactly. Was it not, DA? I mean, that is the best explanation.
The branches have been very carefully woven together to form that blind.
And just be it. I'm not a small guy. I'm not the biggest guy, but I'm not small. And I felt like me, DA, and Noah could have all been inside that little bird nest and still had room to move around. That's how.
Yeah.
Whatever
it was made for something bigger than me or Robbie.
No.
And being as what we found on Blanc Road, that's not that far for something that size to move.
No. Well, as the crow flies, Joe Bald to Blanc Road is really only about 7 or 8 miles. But where we were at, where we had to go, there's, you have to go and backtrack, and then the roads to get there take you miles and miles, a good 15 to 20 miles by road. But if you just followed the lake, there, 5 or 6 miles maybe.
And something like that could do 5 or 6 miles in just about no time.
Yeah.
So let's just say I'm looking forward to April.
We're discovering just how connected these waterways are. I've got a map, and Miss Linnea is the one that posted it in our group on Facebook, but it shows the connecting rivers and to the Mississippi River. Let me see if I've still got that image. I don't know if I do.
Kind of like the whole adage about all roads leading to Rome. Everything flows into the Mississippi.
As a matter of fact, I do. Let me share the screen. Now, this is the Mississippi River Valley and its tributaries. This shows all of the streams and rivers that eventually flow into the Mississippi. And we've long believed that cryptids are using these rivers and cave systems as highways and byways. That just shows you where it could go that eventually leads it to the Gulf of Mexico. Look at all of those tributaries. Those are connected waterways. Right. Those are connected waterways. And if you overlaid that with a map of national forests, a lot of that area is covered by national forest. If you look between St. Louis and Memphis, most of that area is covered by the Mark Twain and the Ozark National Forest, approximately 5 million square acres of national forest. That's not including any of the others. That's just the Mark Twain and the Ozark.
There's even some that looks like it's up in the tip, either Pickens or Oconee in my state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could hop in a river somewhere, and if we were near my hometown where the Mississippi runs very, very close, you could float by us at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know the Saluda River that runs just right down the road from the house. I know it goes on down into Georgia and then keeps on going past that, because Saluda was actually the river that Deliverance was, or part of that river was the river Deliverance was filmed on.
Well, if you look at that, pretty much every major river system, well, okay, not every, but I would say 70 to 80% of the river systems in the United States between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains ultimately end up in the Mississippi. Now, you get a little farther south down in Texas, those rivers get a little more scarce, but then, all of that is still connected even more because this is just rivers. It's not showing where the swamps are. You get down in New Orleans and that all becomes marshy waterway. Even East Texas, all along the big thicket area, that's all marshy swamp area. So basically, the bulk of the middle of that map is covered.
Yeah,
where just places where cryptids could easily go without us seeing them.
Just the Atchafalaya Basin in Louisiana is massive, and look how big Lake Pontchartrain is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Lake Pontchartrain is so big. If you cross Lake Pontchartrain on the bridge in your car, they've had to go out with EMTs to pull people off that bridge because people freak out. It is so wide, you lose sight of land.
Yep.
People will get out on that bridge and no longer be able to see land and freak out. It's happened.
Mm-hmm. I've been across that.
People ran out of gas on it.
Times. Yeah.
We went on our trip to New Orleans.
It's such a common occurrence that they've got signs that said, talking about the bridge, last gas station before the bridge, make sure you've got enough gas, or however they word it. I mean, that unless you've been across that bridge and seen that lake, and it's like looking at the ocean. This is just massive.
Fuck your butthole.
I've never driven across that bridge, but I would like to. But when we were in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, we stayed right. We were in North Myrtle, and the place where we stayed is right in Cherry Grove, and there's a pier at Cherry Grove that goes really far out into the water. And I walked out onto that pier at Cherry Grove, and went to the very edge and just leaned against the rail. And where I was at the end of the pier, I couldn't see the land on either side of me. I mean, it was there. I wasn't far from it, but I couldn't see it. And I kind of had that, oh shit moment where I'm like, God dang, how far out here am I?
Yeah. Well, people have said that a lot of times. If anybody could see what's in the ocean with them, just within,
they wouldn't get in it.
Within feet of them when they're out walking that deep, they'd never get back in the ocean again.
Yeah, I've seen some camera footage from aircraft and drones that were you see sharks like swimming right between people.
So just imagine how far out you were, how deep that water was, what was around there.
I have no idea how deep the water is at the end of that pier.
Well, it's got to be, because you think about 100 yards offshore, you're probably talking there's places that could be over 100 feet deep, just 100 yards offshore.
Well, that whole sensation of deep water is terrifying. Several years ago, I was living in the Philippines, and because my grandfather was, out there in World War II, I wanted to go out to Corregidor Island and see the Pacific War Memorial. Well, the Philippines is in some of the deepest water in the world, and you get like 100 yards from the coast, and it falls off to thousands of feet. And so we're putting along, and I could see the bottom, in this little boat we were in, and the boat I was in was something that probably wouldn't be up to code if it was in the United States. And we had like a 10-mile trip to Corregidor, and all of a sudden everything goes black, and I'm like, That's nice. And, like, wish you didn't know that much about it. And I'm not scared of water, but there were a couple of people on our little boat that probably could have used a Xanax or two.
Well, if you and you can kind of correlate that with what we're talking about is you get out there and you get out on that bridge and you get that feeling of, oh crap, where am I? Think about, you're out in an open space. You got two ways to go. You go the way you are going or the way you, no, I mean, you're not going to get lost, but you get that hopeless feeling out there in the middle of that bridge. What kind of feeling you get if you get lost in the woods where you can't tell which way you came in if you don't know what you're doing? I mean, and that's
even just the dark. Deanna, I've seen that video of that one Scottish dude. He's taking his trash out, or he's working on his fence or something like this, and it's dark, and he hears a growl, like a canine growl, and for whatever reason, he was recording on his cell phone, and you hear him go, "Oh, fuck that!" and he goes running inside, and this is the middle of a town, in a fenced-in yard.
Yeah, I mean, so just imagine that hopeless feeling you get out on that bridge when you know there's only two ways to go. You get out in a situation like that in the dark. I mean, you can see where people lose hope and just lay down and give up.
Well, there are forests here in the United States that you could walk for days and not come out of the woods. The Mark Twain's pretty big, but there are roads through the Mark Twain. If you pick a direction and stick with it, probably in a day or so, you're probably going to cut a road. I've been pretty deep in the Mark Twain, but when it gets real quiet, you can still hear cars in the distance because this is the Midwest. There's a lot of places around here. But if you went up into like Alaska, you might be the only human around for 60 miles.
Yeah. Well, get those places where, well, like you said, there's some places on Mark Twain that have never seen people.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you think about how many acres of national forest there are, that we've thrown that number around many times. I mean,
just in national parks is 88 million.
Yeah.
That's not national
square
forest,
miles, right?
That's not national forest. That's not state parks. That's 88 million square miles of just national parks. That doesn't include the forests or the public use areas or public access areas or what do they call them? There's another word for it.
Well, I mean, just think of it. If you let's say you gridded out the entire national park system, 88 million acres, and you covered, let's say you could do 10 square miles a day, which that's
a good pace.
Impossible. That's almost impossible to cover. To say each grid was 10 square miles. That's almost that's really doing something to cover 10 square miles.
That's impossible on foot.
Yeah,
you could.
So you better hope you have a mule or.
But
something.
even if you could, how long would it take you? At 10 square miles,
you wouldn't live long enough. You wouldn't live long enough to cover it all.
So it is physically impossible for one person. So it's not. It shouldn't be shocking that there's places that humans have still in 2024 have never stepped foot in.
Mm-hmm.
Or at
least there are places in northern Canada where I doubt that any European has ever been. There's probably been Native Americans through there at some point. But there are places up in northern Canada where the only way to get there is by float plane.
Mm-hmm.
When Doug Hychak goes bigfooting up at Snellgrove Lake, literally the only way to get there without spending weeks traveling overland by horse is by float plane.
Well, and another thought came to mind here. One of the folks in the chat, I'd have to rewind it to see who it was, had made the comment about, cell phones are useless, bring a sat phone. Okay, well, that works well and good, but how many occasions have we gotten of batteries suddenly draining?
And I experienced that at Joe Bald. We had batteries just dead.
Well, I had a 3-cell mag light, with you when we had our, quote unquote encounter. And remember how dim my light was
Oh yeah,
when I was down there? That was fresh D batteries.
yeah. That thing
And mag
was
lights are,
barely brighter than a candle by the time we left there.
oh seriously, and mag lights are known for their brightness. I had an LED bulb in there that should have blinded every owl in the place, and we had no idea.
But some of the places that we've talked about are infamous for dogman attacks. Um, through in history, yeah, there are talks about how these creatures were friendly to humans and even helpful. But hearing stories that where people are saying a dogman was helpful or friendly is pretty rare these days. I've got to say, I've only spoken to a couple of people that have had a peaceful encounter with a dogman. My encounter with Nick Valente in LBL, while I didn't feel in danger. I don't think it had. I don't think it had the intent to hurt us, but it wasn't what I'd call a friendly encounter. Once it realized we'd seen it, it took off. But I think if we'd tried to pursue that thing, I don't think it would have ended well for us.
No, it wasn't coming up trying to get a snack, as in like a cookie or something like that.
Right.
It wanted nothing to do with you.
Dash 5257 says story is that Theodore Roosevelt's Bigfoot story about the 200s is actually him. That's why he set up the national parks. We have talked about that for a good long time. I'm probably going to be doing another show just on that here in the near future. I'm going to talk to Ryan Paul, see if he would like to join us on that show, because I know he's got a lot to add on that subject. But yeah, I definitely want to revisit that topic and probably do an entire show, because some things have come to light that to me just kind of validates that theory. And I'm not saying that we came up with that theory, but I would say we were one of the early people pushing it. We've been talking about that for a couple of years now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it stands to reason. Nobody's ever come forward and said that was me.
Right.
Deathbed confessions where somebody says, "Well, that was my ancestor," or anything like that. It's
Right.
just it's always been. It just stopped right there with the book.
And no
Well,
first name
and-
was ever given for the guy, and we'll save that for the show. But
Well,
yeah,
it plays back to your credibility. I mean, you're active law enforcement, Robbie. Now, granted, you have a pretty good relationship with your chief, but if you didn't, and it was just your chief, and you walked up to him and said, "Hey, boss, I just saw a 9-foot werewolf, pissing on a tree. It was eating a deer whole." He'd be like, "Give me your gun and your badge, and
take this
we're gonna
cup
go
and
have
go in
a
the bathroom over there for me."
exactly. We're gonna go have a talk with the nice people at drug testing." And now, granted, what you've told about your chief, it'd be like, "Fuck yeah, show me where I'm going."
Yeah, let's go. Let's go see that son of a gun.
Yeah, that's exactly what my chief would do.
Oh
But-
yeah, but he's not your typical
But
chief.
To your
you guys
point,
have a good
see,
relationship.
most normal people, if you went up and said that to them, would, and yes, I said most normal people because my chief is not normal, but I love him for it. That's one of the best things about him. But yeah, most people would look at you and be like,
If I had an encounter,
"When
even
you
with
going to be
me
in the next
working as
5 minutes?" Oh yeah, that's right. You're going to be up at
me working as a professional in the public, if I had such an encounter, I wouldn't go to the newspaper and tell everybody about it. I would tell you two, because you two would appreciate it the most. And
you don't exactly go around telling people about what happened at Joe Bald.
no, I do not. I do not, because I prefer not to be having to do those tests myself. I passed the test with flying colors, but still,
It's got to go study for the urinalysis.
yeah, taking a whiz quiz in the morning. Let me make sure I pass. It's the same reason I don't drink within 24 hours of a shift.
Dino Bravo fan says, do werewolves stink or smell like something that has not been washed in a long time? I've heard some people describe hearing smelling a musky smell, and then other people describe not smelling anything at all. I think it all depends on the individual. Some of them probably do, don't maintain their body hygiene. Others probably do.
I would think that a dog man would probably have a smell of like a dog that's lived outdoors, that dirty
Probably.
mutt smell, I would think.
Dash 5257 says Joe Bald Road has always been odd. I've gotten several stories out of that area. And that is a bizarre area. And every time I'm down at Joe Bald, even when I'm down there during the day, it's just a weird place. And I remember camping there as a kid, and we only did it a couple of times. And my dad started picking other campgrounds. And I'm like, why don't we go back to the lake up there? He's like, oh, these others are closer. But then then they closed it down, and it has not been opened back up. But it's just a weird area.
Yeah.
Still Harrington says, what are the signs of a dog man being around? I would say they'd be similar to much any other large predator. You'd start seeing people's small pets disappearing in your neighborhood. Livestock would be attacked. You might have animals go missing, like larger animals like sheep, small calves, small cattle. And then you're going to start hearing, you'll hear like wolves howling, but generally it's going to sound too big to be a wolf if it's a dog man. Imagine a 400-pound wolf, what it's going to sound like. It's going to sound much bigger than your average. Like a red wolf is what, $120, $130. Timber wolf can get closer to 2 bills, but that's a big wolf. But you hear something that's 500, 600, 700 pounds of muscle, it's going to sound much louder.
My wolf was a part gray wolf, part timber wolf, and he was 2 years old and 165 pounds. So good size boy.
Well, I mean, and just to put that in perspective, Cap's about 105, 110, somewhere around in there, and he can stand up on his back legs and he can put his front paws on my shoulder and look me eye to eye, and I'm almost 5'10". That's 105 to 110 pound German Shepherd. So just imagine how big a 200-pound wolf would be, and then multiply that.
Even a 200-pound wolf, its paw print is only going to be 4.5, maybe 5 inches wide. The ones Robbie and I found at Joe Bald were damn near 7.
Yeah. Well, and another thing to consider, if the dogman or even any other predator is imminently in the area, you're going to hear everything go quiet. The birds will be silent. The bugs will be silent. It's like all of Mother Nature knows that something's wrong and wants to just be as silent as possible.
That's the first thing I said when we got out of the car that night. I turned around and looked at DA and I said, damn, it's quiet around here.
Yeah, it's eerily quiet. And you can hear stuff like down over across the lake at the next area, but in your immediate area, nothing.
All you hear is the wall.
Larry Berland asked, what type of firearms and ammunition do you guys carry on your field trips? Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on where we go. I generally have a handgun of some type, either 9mm or 45. But when I went with Robbie, I made sure to carry my 9 because we could swap ammo. But
you have more rounds to work with.
Right, exactly, a lot more. But it depends on where you're going to be. I mean, there's. If you're worried about something the size of a grizzly bear in your area, you certainly want to carry something bigger than a 22. 9mm probably wouldn't be that effective against a grizzly. So you just got to know your area, what your potential threats are, and kind of gauge it from there. Granted, if you're worried about a Bigfoot or a dogman in your area, you got to kind of check local laws because they kind of frown on you walking around with a 12 gauge or a full tricked out AR. But laws change from state to state. I mean, Missouri is a constitutional carry state, which means if you're above the age of 18 and you don't have a felony, you can carry a concealed firearm in Missouri. We're pretty open with our gun laws here, and I'm pretty happy about that. Yeah. Neil Decker says 450 Bushmaster. I kind of prefer the 458 SOCOM, not necessarily because it has more power, because similar the 450 Bushmaster's got similar penetration. I just like the 458 because there's such a wide variety of rounds.
Yeah, that's part of the reason that I switched from 45 to 9, is I like the fact that 9 was so varied in what kind of ballistic characteristics you're looking for. You got all many choices of ammo, and if the world ever went pear-shaped, most law enforcement carries 9, so there's a source of ammunition in a pinch.
And,
Bobby, what about you, brother?
Well, you obviously know my rifle. I carry 458 SOCOM, and I have just recently got a 5.7 Rock, so I carry 5.7 now on as my sidearm. And me and DA just did some ballistic deep dive on it before we got on the show, and that's a mean little round.
Yeah, it is.
What did we say muzzle velocity was? 2,100 or something like that?
2,330 feet per second muzzle velocity on that 5.7.
Yeah.
It'll go through
with the capability of punching through 2 bulletproof vests at less than 50 yards.
Yeah. So screw you, screw your vest, and screw the guy behind you.
Yeah. So that thing's got some wicked penetration. Unfortunately, it's a very small round. So on something the size of a Bigfoot or a Dogman, yeah, it's going to penetrate, but will it do much damage? Is the question.
That's why
Well,
it's got 23 more friends coming right behind it. So it's got high.
You carry plenty of buddies. Dino Bravo fan says, why is Dogman cited in the Maritimes, PEI, and New Brunswick? PEI is Prince Edward Island. For those of you who don't know, New Brunswick is New Brunswick. They're cited all over. Yeah, all over North America. They're cited in Europe. They're cited in Australia. These things are seen in a lot of places. And one of the reasons,
North Carolina. I mean, obviously military bases are a big hotspot anyway, but
I think that any place that has the resources to support a large predator like that, if your area can support bears and mountain lions, it can support Bigfoot or Dogman. If there's ample food supply, if there's ample water supply, if there's places they can find shelter, like caves, or even if they're smart enough to construct shelters, you just got to look at your area. If you live in southern Arizona, yes, they might still be there, but they're going to be a lot more rare because there's less out there. Water's more scarce.
Probably the smaller variety too.
But you get up into the woods of Saskatchewan, and where the woods are so dang thick that at 2:00 in the afternoon you can still barely see your hand in front of your face. Dash 5257 Missouri is a hotspot. We do have a lot of sightings, especially along the Mississippi and along the Missouri. A lot of encounter activity along those big rivers. And Table Rock Lake and Lake of the Ozarks also are seeming to be areas where we're getting more and more sightings.
We also have a lot of caves.
Yeah, Missouri is known as a cave state. And we've recently, the recent estimates believe that the Mammoth Cave system that goes underneath, Tennessee, Kentucky, and a lot of the eastern United States may possibly extend as far as Maine all the way to southern New Mexico. That would be the perfect highways for these things to use as to travel and to hide. And if you look at overlay the map of the missing 411s, well, hell, I'll just pull the map up. I know where that's at. Let me give me just a second to find it. I got to find which folder it's in.
Yeah, Kelly Marie posted an interesting question, DA. Let me see if I can pull it up. Talk about the laws. Just asking the question: if you're out and about in your forest, is there laws if you come across dogmen or werewolves? Are you allowed to shoot to kill if you're in danger, or are they protected or something?
Well, generally,
I would think if we don't officially recognize them, right?
Right. Well, generally in most states, if you're in danger, you're allowed to defend yourself. There are some states that have laws in place to protect Bigfoot, but I've never heard of one that has one in place to protect Dogman. Now, however, having said that, They did try to change the federal hunting guidelines to include near-human chimeras, but it didn't pass. So that makes you wonder, what the heck they were talking about near-human chimeras.
Right. Why would they do that?
Good rule of thumb, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. If something's attacking me, I'll worry about whether or not I'm going to get in trouble for it later.
Yeah. Now, that being said, I wouldn't go out looking for one.
Definitely not.
Mm-mm.
Sorry, I'm trying to find that overlay map. It is not apparently in the folder that I thought it was in.
What is that expression that that Doc uses when y'all tap your watch? What time is?
Look at the time.
Look at the time.
Yep.
It's 1:30. Get the hell out of here.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah, my concern was that I run across one of these things and I shoot it and kill it. No, my luck would be Northwoods X, and then I end up going to jail.
I think Northwood would probably testify on your behalf that you were
That's a good
Yeah,
possibility.
probably would.
that you were in fear for your life.
All right, I've got it. Let me share the screen. Now, if you look at this, the top map shows the missing 411 clusters where the majority of people have gone missing. And the map beneath it is major cave systems. Weird how well those overlap.
There's an odd correlation there.
Yeah, they're the same map, essentially. Yes, they're both maps of the United States, but if you look at where those clusters are and then look at the map directly beneath it and see where those cave systems are, that's where the major disappearances are. So I don't really think it's a big stretch of the imagination to think that cryptids are using caves, that Dogman is using caves, Bigfoot is using caves. They're also, they're deeper than we're capable of going. We've got accounts from the USGS that have gotten a couple of days inside a cave, mapping cave systems and found bones, including, finding pieces of camping equipment that there is no way a person got that deep without a major expedition. So it leads me to believe that something is using those deep caves. We start talking
Dogman
about
got
the
takeout?
hollow, right? We start talking about the hollow Earth theory. I don't really think that the Earth is particularly hollow like an egg. I think it's more of networks of massive caverns.
That the crust is kind of built like a lasagna.
Yeah.
You've got layers
Miss Lene
of
said,
space.
DA, I did a lot of research last week, and am finding out that the Shawnee National Forest here in southern Illinois has long been a hot spot for both Bigfoot and Dogman. Again, that does not surprise me because the Shawnee comes very close to LBL. And it's also, you've got the Mississippi right there. You've got both the Ohio and the Ohio River, the Kentucky River. You've got some pretty big lakes and rivers in that area, and those areas connect very well through the watershed. So let me bring that watershed map back up because it's just, to me, it absolutely says it all. Bring that back up again. I mean, Miss Lene, all through. Well, let me. If you can see my cursor moving around over here, there's St. Louis. This is the state of Illinois right here. LBL is about here, and look at all these river systems.
It's kind of a nexus of them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's connected. And if you follow these river systems this direction, where you see all of this blue, right over in here is Table Rock Lake. I think that's Lake of the Ozarks right there. And Table Rock would be about here. It's down closer to the Arkansas border. That'd be Table Rock, Taneycomo, Bull Shoals, all three large man-made lakes right there near the Missouri-Arkansas border. Also, all three areas where sightings are fairly common.
Mm-hmm. And who
Poncho
made the
says,
man-made lakes?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers. And who is it that wants to keep Joe Bald's closed?
Army Corps of Engineers.
Hmm.
Miss Lene says, except for the rivers, there's basically forest coverage all the way to LBL. There you go. Roxanne Delgado says dogman and graveyards. Yeah, there seems to be a weird connection. And it's not just dogman, it's cryptids. Something about graveyards seems to attract them. When I was in LBL at the Nickel Cemetery, I had several weird things happen. I could hear things pacing me in the woods. I never got to see what it was. It never came out. But there was something around me in the woods right there at the Nickel Cemetery, and a couple of the other cemeteries that I honestly couldn't tell you the names of them because I couldn't find them on a map. Audacious Amber says, "What if cryptids are protecting underground training facilities and DUMBs, deep underground military bases? They could be. I mean, allegedly here recently, this was reported on another channel. Although I have yet to track the story down personally, but I have heard the story from another channel where I believe it was in North Carolina that highway patrolmen saw dogmen creatures in gear working with the military.
Nice.
So again, I have not had a chance to
stayed away from me.
story.
Great.
But great, because let's give them body armor.
Yeah. Does not surprise me. It does not surprise me to find that the government is using these things. But again, I don't believe that they created them. Not
now, who thinks they've been here way too long for getting a bullet that can go through through soft body armor? Huh?
Well, yeah.
Why would the
military carries plate carriers.
Why would any of this happen?
Steve's getting his hat out. Mark Napier says the Green River runs through Mammoth Cave National Park, and I now live 3 miles from the main visitor center. Well, there you go, man.
Don't keep your gun in your barn.
General's got a good comment. New meaning to devil dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hoorah.
Don't keep your guns in the barn. Keep them in the house.
So, folks, what we're discussing here with Dogman is just because the term Dogman is new doesn't mean these creatures are. There are a lot of people that thought since Dogman's a relatively new term, that meant that people have only been seeing them for like the last 6 or 7 years, and that's not true at all. Sightings are going back to these things in the LBL area back when it was known as Land Between the Rivers. It dates back to the late 1600s, early 1700s for French trappers. Up in Maine, apparently, it dates back to the first settlers of Maine. Here in Missouri, around Lake of the Ozarks, they used to have a thing they called the Beast of the Valley until they dammed that river, and it became Lake of the Ozarks. Now people call it the Beast of the Lake because it's still there.
We'll just think about how far
Lewis and Clark document something.
What's that?
Did Lewis and Clark document something in their journals?
I believe they did, and I need to go back through the book I've got about Lewis and Clark because they documented cryptid sightings, and a lot of the stuff that's been publicly released in their journals it's not in there. I would love to see an unedited version of their journal released, but it's not. The Smithsonian was very careful about what they released.
But look at the Beast of Bray Road. Look how far back that legend goes. I want to say that goes back to what, the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, when you start really breaking all these things down, looking at them, this is something that's been around, and at the expense of sounding really, really cryptid about it, this is something that's been lurking around and skulking around for a long time. It's been right there on the edge of our perception for a long, long time.
And just because they didn't have the term Dogman That doesn't mean it wasn't there. I mean, same thing with Bigfoot. The term Bigfoot was not created until 1957, when they first ran that article with Jerry Crews holding up the plaster cast he took along that logging road.
Yep, it said Bigfoot terrorizes logging camp, and it stuck.
The term was. But if you look at Native American lore, there are dozens of names for this thing that existed long before European settlers were ever here.
And all over the world. Yowie, Aaron, Almasti, Almast, Orang Pendak, Barmano. I mean, how many times have we sat here and gone over all these names? Different descriptions in certain ways, but for the most part, could all be the same type of creature.
Bizzle A has a good comment. It says, an interesting theory I recently heard is Neanderthal survived way longer than previously thought and may have also looked different than previously thought. Slight muzzle look and dark, thick hair. If you look at the book Them and Us by Danny Vendramini, it's a reimagining of what Neanderthal looked like. And when you start checking that book out, it makes perfect sense, because the illustrations that they've got of what they believe Neanderthal actually looked like, it matches up with a lot of Bigfoot sightings. It really does.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, the Y-Files, one of my favorite non-cryptid channels, did a show about that book, and the stuff that he said and the graphics he put was terrifying.
I've got the book. If you'd like to read it, Steve, I've got it.
I would like to check it out.
Mark says, "Oh, I'm prepared, Steve. If I go to the mailbox, I'm packing." That's the way it is around here. I don't. If I'm awake and dressed, I've got a pew pew on. I don't go anywhere uptown without one, because it's just too dangerous.
Yeah, I'm not quite as dedicated as you are, but the fact that I live in the middle of town helps me a little bit. But I have seen deer in my parking lot, though, so maybe that doesn't help.
Well, we've seen deer and heard coyotes from here at our house, and we're pretty far in town.
I think that keeping with the military, because it seemed like there's a lot of comments and questions about the military, and I want to say back when Lance was still doing What's Really Out There with me, we did a show, and I want to say we talked about something about some stories out of Camp Lejeune, the Marine Corps base up in North Carolina.
There are a lot of sighting reports in or around military bases.
Yeah. But specifically, Camp Lejeune is known for dogman sightings, if I'm not mistaken. And now you talk about you're seeing somebody sees a dogman up there in military uniforms with the military. It's just kind of
a little close to home.
Yeah, a little close to home. Just one state away. Because from my house, I could probably be to Camp Lejeune in 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, a pontoon Patty needs to have some clarification about what the Lakeview story is.
The Lakeview Man story is the first of my books of the Lakeview Man series. I write a lot of books that are cryptid related. They're books of fiction, but they are based on years of gathered evidence and sightings and encounter stories to make the behaviors of the creatures as realistic as I possibly can. So I've done years of field research and compiling information and reading books and talking to eyewitnesses, and all of that has gone to help me create the way the behaviors of the creatures are in my books. And I do have plans for some nonfiction books in the near future, but at the moment, all of the books I have in print are works of fiction.
Sorry, Pontoon Patriot. Your name was truncated on my computer here. I didn't mean to misspeak it. I'm working on about a 14-inch MacBook, so I don't have quite the screen space that these other gentlemen do. Pontoon Patriot. That's a pretty awesome alias. I love it.
Like it.
I definitely approve.
I was going to say something, completely lost my train of thought. Robbie, would you do me a favor?
Sure.
Would you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Scallywag Tactical? Well, I need to step across the hall. My diuretics are screaming, and I need to take advantage of a momentary break.
You go
So
right
I'll
ahead.
put up.
I'll
I'll
be
put
glad
that
to.
up, and I'm gonna mute my.
He's going to go raise the water table a little bit.
Yep. So, Scallywag Tactical is one of our affiliates, and they make some of the best blades that you could ever hope to get. This right here is the Bounty. This is this is the
I'm
coolest
going to pull
thing.
this down over my face so people can see it. There we go.
This is one of the coolest things that one of the best. Now, I love my new pew pew, but this thing right here is just, that's freaking wicked. And all of their knives are that way. If you get,
Well, you got to have a snip to go along with the pew pew.
yep, you got to. And their knives are just like top of the line. I mean, I've had, I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I've had every knife imaginable. I'm just that's guns and knives are my thing. I love guns and I love knives. I've made my own knives. Not as good as Ken, obviously, but I've made my own knives. If I go to a gun and knife show, I can't come home without buying myself a knife or a gun or something, because that's just my addiction. And Scallywag has become my go-to. There's not another knife company around that can compete with them as far as price and dependability and functionality. I mean, they're just, and Don's talking about the Gunner's Mate. Between my Gunner's Mate and my Bounty, if I had another hand, I would probably put my Dewclaw in it, and if I had another hand, I would probably, is it Kali? This is the sword goddess DA that's got all the
multiple arms.
Yeah, multiple arms with knives. that would be me.
What I'm trying to say is his favorite Scallywag knife is the one he's holding at that moment. So
see, I knew you got it, Steve. I knew you got me.
I got you, boy. Love you.
Whichever one's in my hand is my favorite knife. If my Jolly Roger is in my hand, it's my favorite. If my sailor assisted folder, my Orca, my Bounty, my Gunner's Mate, my Dewclaw, whichever one I've got in my hand is my favorite one. And the thing is I carry the what's the karambit called, DA?
It's called the karambit, I believe.
That I carry that on my body armor. And I was sitting there messing around with it, sitting there talking out. I was pulling it out and putting it back in, pulling it out, putting it back in. The receptionist at school says, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You pulled that knife out of the holster and put it back in about 12 times while we're sitting there talking." I said, "Practice." I said, it's
a redneck fidget spinner.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so comfortable. I wasn't even thinking that I was pulling it, because these things fit so good and so comfortable in your hands. Me and DA was talking about that the other day, just how as big and heavy as this thing is so well balanced and feels so good. I mean, it's a two-handed weapon, but you can comfortably use one hand on this thing. It is weighted so well. I mean, 2-3 pounds, maybe, DA? Is that what we said?
Yeah, it's a fairly heavy blade.
And for it to be that heavy, I mean, you can see how thick the spine is on this thing. That is some good balance to be able to hold a knife like that easy with that much weight on it. And man, you can't say enough about it. And the kitchen knives, I finally got to see those when we was hanging out in DA's house. Those things are amazing. I don't know if they're 100% Damascus, if they're just supposed to look like Damascus, but if they're just supposed to look Damascus, that's the best looking fake Damascus I've ever seen. Just put it that way.
They go through tomatoes like the big ones go through paper. Just
I would say that those are actual pattern welded steel Damascus knives. Because I've seen a lot of fake Damascus knives, and if those are the best fakes I've ever seen as far as Damascus goes.
I can't imagine Craig would put out a fake, honestly.
And I don't think so either.
It means too much to him.
I don't think so either. I think they're real and they're beautiful. The handles, the Damascus, they all go together so beautiful. And all his knives are that way. I mean, you can have a functional knife that doesn't look really good, that is like, okay, well, it's functional. That's fine. You can have it not look the greatest. But if you've got a knife that looks really good and it's functional, that's just like, you can't beat that. It's the same thing with a gun. I mean, if you can marry functionality and really good looks, then you've got a hit on your hands. And Craig's he knocks it out of the park with every one of his knives. It's just, so go take a look, scallywagtactical.com. Use code DARoberts10 at checkout, get yourself 10% off. There's still a few knives in the blemish blade section. It's probably making room for some more because they've got a few new types of knives coming out. They've got some.
Bounty and the Gunner's Mate are both currently sold out.
There's a reason that those knives stay sold out.
No, they're good stuff, and you don't have to. I mean, if you're not somebody who's in the market for a glorified gladius, you have smaller knives. Being a nurse working in a hospital, I'm not technically supposed to have a knife on me, but there are some chores in the hospital that a pair of trauma shears doesn't work for. And I carry a mini jack with me, and it's a tiny little 3-inch folder, and I haven't sharpened it since I got it, and it'll cut through a 1/4 inch of cardboard without, reacting.
I keep the mini jack right here on my pack. Of course, I've always got a scallywag in my pocket, but I keep that mini jack right there on my day pack.
Yep, that is my EDC knife, and ironically, the security guard at the hospital had borrowed it from me to open things before that they could get into. So the same ones are supposed to tell me not to carry the knife. So we're good.
Well, tell them to order one from themselves. Yeah, folks, make sure you go to Scallywag Tactical, use discount code DARoberts10 for 10% off your entire order, and that does apply to the blemish blades. And they are saying that there are as many as 20 new blade designs going to be available this year.
Well, they've already, that small cleaver has just come out. I can't remember what it's called. It's pretty cool looking.
Yeah.
And it's got multiple colors on the handles.
This is one of the new ones. It's called the Dugan.
I like it.
Push dagger, and it is stupid sharp.
Oh,
if he ever makes himself a kunai, I will probably buy several of those. Yeah.
Well, let me check the chat real quick. I haven't checked it in a minute. So out of all of the areas that we've talked about, from across the country with some of the more infamous dogman sightings, which one of those areas would you guys most like to take an expedition to?
Personally, I would think LVL, just because, I mean, do we even know the site of the Lockett Ranch anymore?
There's speculation on what area of Taylor, Mississippi was the old Lockett Ranch. but apparently it's been abandoned since the 50s, so there's really no way to know exactly what section of land belonged to the Locketts. I would have to get down to that area and find somebody local who could hopefully guide us to the right spot. But I do believe that the place is still there, but I would say it's probably, since it's been abandoned for 80 years, I would say there's probably no structures left other than just wreckage.
You'd have to get coordinates or something to find it. At least with LBL, although you're not supposed to be there and it's difficult to get there, you can get there.
Yes.
The
But
location.
there are areas of
known.
LBL that are blocked off too. They have chains across the road, and you're not supposed to go in there. You can park your vehicle and get on and walk in, but there's some places in LBL I would be very leery about walking into if you're alone. How about you, Robbie?
Well, I think that was an obvious one. The LBL.
He wants to come back to Joe Bald.
Yeah, I mean that. But I've been to Joe Bald now. Now it's time for the LBL.
Yeah, copy that.
LBL is one of those places where it's 170,000 acres. We could spend a week there and not see it all.
Yeah.
Joe Bald, we could walk Joe Bald in an afternoon. I mean, it's not huge. It's only about 120 acres. May not even be that much. And there are houses nearby, but they're not in the park itself. So you could cover all of Joe Bald in a day, easy. I would like to go down there and stay there at night with a group. But LBL is one of those, we could do numerous expeditions and still not cover the entire place. But when I go back, I definitely want to be a little better prepared than the last time I went. We're going to be able to do drone coverage. I'm going to have my shotgun mic. I'm going to have a lot more equipment than I've had any time before. So be looking for stuff along those veins, as we are planning field videos, and look for a lot more from the channel, and not only for this channel but from Robbie's channel as well, because we'll be talking about the events there and probably even play some of the videos there. Neil Decker says, "I'd love to go to Taylor, Mississippi." Even today, there are still animal attacks happening near Taylor, Mississippi. And even if somebody, if you were to remove the Lockett Ranch story from the equation, because there's some speculation by people that they say, oh, that story isn't true, because there's no proof. Darkwater's very, very thoroughly investigated that story, and I believe he has a very compelling story. I believe it's true. I believe it happened. But if
He has a good track record too.
Yeah, he does have a good track record. But even if you took that out of the equation, there are stories of animal mutilations. Just outside Taylor, there was a trucker reported one trying to get into his truck. So there are sightings in that area. And if you look at that place on a Google map area, it's a pretty woolly area.
As a consolation prize, Werewolf Springs. I'd like to go there too.
That's not far from LBL.
Hey, before we get too close to wrapping things up, I know she got some new wall hangings in the background there, Robbie. What have you added to your set there?
What is that? Well, somebody was asking the other night about some laser engraving, so I figured I would just put some stuff up here. We got a Dogman, and then the Dark Frontiers logo. I've got a Wild Hunt logo that's it's probably done by now. I went and checked on it before we got started. It wasn't finished. Just trying to do some stuff just so people can see. I can't remember who was asking about it, but somebody was wanting, I think it was 3D Havoc, was wanting to see some stuff. So I just figured I'd put some stuff up just so Little product placement.
It's awful pretty.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, you got some product placement for me behind you, so I figured
I do. Yeah. I think, pardon my backside. See, I told you all I wasn't wearing pants. Got shorts. I think we have the first posting of the original Steve's Pub and Grub emblem at Steve's Pub and Grub. So that's pretty badass.
Really?
And then if I can keep from tripping over my damn dog's crate, I'll show you the other one. Well, I'll rehang that later. You don't need to be seeing me fool with that. And then I have something that would definitely have to be at Steve's Pub and Grub. That's pretty badass too, DA. I love it.
Thank you, sir. Robbie made this one too.
I'll hang those back up again after the show so you don't have to look at my fat butt. But I had to plug Long Wolf Customs. They make some pretty good stuff.
Yes, they
That boy
do.
good.
We try. We.
The royal we.
Yeah. Me and my imaginary crew.
Well, you know, some people talk to the turd in their pocket. No judgments.
Yeah. Yeah. I got Johnny's son just locked me into a little contract. He does the Bassmaster Kayak Anglers Association. He's got the South Carolina chapter. He's the president of. So I'm doing their which I think I sent you a picture of it, DA, or I might have even sent it in the group chat. But I did their little first, second, and third place trophy plaques, which I did them on things like this. So yeah, things are working out pretty good. It's just wish it was a little more steady, but.
So you might be a little entertained by this, Rob. I hadn't told you the story yet. So you know, it's not a big secret to the channel that, you know, over the years I've had struggled with mental health a little bit. Well, a few months ago, I got set up with a psychiatrist and things have been wonderful. Well, I had a virtual visit the other day with my psychiatrist, and she's looking at the decorations behind me, you know, because it was here at my desk. And she's like, "What is Steve's Pub and Grub?" And I had to explain it to her. And I said, "Well, it's a fictional bar that is you know, kind of the unofficial meeting place of the Wild Hunt military unit." And she goes, "Okay, I see the Wild Hunt. Is that a real thing?" I'm like, "Go on to Amazon and look up D.A. Roberts. Read some of his books. They're awesome." And she kind of laughed. She goes, "I'll look that up." But she's sitting there squinting, looking at her screen, trying to see what that stuff was.
Boys, it's been a good show tonight.
Damn good show.
Yeah.
Before we knock it off, do we need to plug Doc real quick, or is that what you were doing?
We already did Doc. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Brock Blades? I'll let you.
I sure will. Yeah, pop up the little cheat for me.
I'm working on it. There we go.
All right. There we go. I'll just duck under it here. There we go. So yeah, Brock Blades. We kind of mentioned them in passing earlier. You know, Scallywag Tactical makes some really nice blades. Don't get me wrong; they are some of the best mass-produced blades in the business, if not the best for the price. Brock Blades, on the other hand, every single blade is custom made. They are made one at a time by Ken Brock. Some made to order, some made individually and just sold. And so they're a whole different critter. They're a work of art within themselves, and they are good quality material. And you know, it's like Doc says about his kits. You know, his kits are not cheap because they're not cheap kits. Same thing with Ken's blades. They are good and they're a work of art you'll have a lifetime. And as an affiliate of us, he gives us a discount if you use the code Cryptid10 on your order. You get 10% off at brockblades.com. If it's something that is you know, where you can't input the code, let him know and he'll give you the discount. And Ken is a hell of a nice guy. He's the other tactical midget to balance out our Doc Davis here, and a great guy, even though he makes fun of my hair. But show them some business. If you're into blades and you want something that nobody else on the block has, reach out to Ken, because he's got you covered. And they got everything short of little, hidden knives for
short of little.
like your skin dude.
That's funny.
Little neck weasel knives all the way up. I mean, a knife for every size and occasion. Pretty good dude.
Yeah, Ken's an awesome guy. That kind of, once we start winding down the show, that brings me to something I always want to mention, and that's the 22 a Day Foundation. I'm a big supporter of the Till Valhalla project because they're big supporters of the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and if you go to the Officer Down Memorial page, odmp.com, you'll see the number of officers that we're losing in the line of duty and to suicide. 22 a day is entirely too many, and it's preventable. We need to get that number down to 0. And tonight, instead of my 22 a Day Foundation bracelet, I'm wearing my Officer Down bracelet, because those of you who may have seen the news know that a Missouri officer was killed in the line of duty just a few days ago. In Independence, Missouri, process server was trying to deliver an eviction notice, and the person opened fire, killed an officer, killed the process server, and injured several people. It was a pretty nasty bit of business, and the Blue family lost one of their own this week here in Missouri.
I think you misspoke. You said a person did it. It's a piece of shit, not a person.
I totally agree. But folks, these folks are out there putting their lives on the line. Robbie puts on a uniform every day, puts his ass on the line for people. I did it for years. I'm retired now, but I was proud to have served and damn proud to have worn a uniform. Steve is the first responder. He works in the medical field. He puts his
brother's
butt
a
on.
cop.
Well, Steve's brother is a cop. That we all, me, Steve, Doc, Robbie, all of us here, we know somebody or we have done it. Actually, all of us have put on one uniform or another, but we all still have friends and family that are in the line. And again, 22 a day is entirely too many. So reach out to your friends and family who are first responders or veterans or even still on active duty, because sometimes the things they see can't be so easily put aside. I know in my career, I saw a lot of things that I wish I hadn't had to see. And I feel like I was put on this earth to do that kind of job because I was strong enough to handle it, and not everybody is. I don't know if Robbie felt that way, but I made my peace with that a long time ago, knowing that I was agreeing to do and see things that no normal human should see. And it still lingers with me. Sometimes it wakes me up in the middle of the night and sits with me for a while.
Darkness goes home with you.
That's right.
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. We're not wired like normal people. Can't be.
Yeah, we're the folks that run toward the sound of gunfire, not away from it.
Y'all ain't right, but I love you anyway.
Yeah, we definitely ain't right. So definitely check out the Valhalla Project. TillValhallaProject.com. They have some amazing things. And unlike a lot of the big charities that I could name, bigger charities, if you donate $100, it's really lucky if an actual dollar of it makes it to the veterans, because they're paying so many salaries in these large charities. And there are a number of exposés on YouTube and that have been done, like on Dateline, where they've exposed just how many of these charities really are for profit. Till Valhalla is not like that. It's by veterans for veterans. And these guys put 95% of anything they get right back in. And they're helping to buy service animals for veterans. They're helping to get therapy for veterans when the VA falls short. They're getting plaques for families of the fallen. They've helped buy artificial limbs for people that have lost one. So Till Valhalla Project it got my full support. I love those guys, and they're doing a hell of a good job. So check them out. They've got some amazing T-shirts. If you look at my channel, you'll see me wearing different shirts of theirs all the time. They have some fantastic shirts. If you want to support veterans, that is a great way to do it. So check out Tell Valhalla Project. Check out the Officer Down Memorial page because you can see in real time just how many officers we're losing in the line of duty because the media is not telling you about stuff like this. They're not covering. They don't seem to care when
Doesn't
these
fit
first
the agenda.
responders. Right, it doesn't fit the agenda. We're losing first responders at an alarming rate. We're losing veterans to suicide at a terrifying rate. So just be there for your friends and family that have been there, that have worn a uniform. I don't care what uniform it was. If they served their community or their country in any capacity, they deserve our respect and they deserve our support. And just reach out to your friends and family and let them know that hey, how are you doing? Text may be the one thing that keeps them off the edge that day. So let's get 22 down to 0. Because 22 a day is a hell of a lot of people to lose. And I've seen far too many friends buried under that folded flag, and it's last call on a radio is one of the most gut wrenching, sorrowful things you'll ever hear. Just same thing when I hear taps, I get teary eyed every time I hear taps. So reach out to your friends and family, let them know you're there. And we've been ending the show on a quote with a toast. The quote is from a song called The Parting Glass. It's an old Irish drinking song. They play it all at Irish pubs all over the world at the close of night when they're lifting a glass and heading their separate ways. But if you read the lyrics, if you listen to the song, it's got some very powerful lyrics. And it's not just talking about saying goodnight at the end of the day of the pub. It's lifting that glass for those that have gone on before, those who weren't there to lift the glass anymore. And we lift our glasses tonight, not only for that fallen officer here in Missouri, but for first responders and soldiers we've lost all over the world. And, we say a prayer for each and every one of them. And we want our brothers and sisters in uniform to know that we are here for them. We love them, and that someone still cares. So raise your glass with me. But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all. Good night, everybody.
Enjoy.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.